get second endurance, right? A lot of these times these decks play at least two of them because you also can target yourself. Slash, there's not a ton of cards you really want in your deck when it comes to living end. So the fact that we have four is big. It means that we can block here. Even if we discard our hand, we can then maybe clean that up. And if Mateo discards a bunch of more threats, that might actually give us the green light to slam a living end. And right now, that living end would probably be pretty great if nothing else came back against it, as we just
Yeah,
seem to be drawing a ton of lands recently.
yeah. You would take you would take the current graveyard as long as you were ahead. I think you wouldn't want it to be your answer. You'd want it to be the proactive play. But yeah, lots of land and not the ideal spot. Also an empty graveyard to boot. And we're
Ooh.
prismatic in.
Yeah, the prismatic ending here is nice. This card doesn't have a lot of great spots in this matchup, right? Like there's just a lot of the creatures are much bigger than that. So basically discarding one card here over to get across to your frog and not have to discard anything makes other endurances a lot less of an issue.
Okay, big cycles. I think he was always probably letting that go. I think that was just that was just the position he was in with for the plan to fill the graveyard. So let's see what the comeback response will be here. Yeah, a really big hand and a lot of things for the living in player to play around.
So really loud play here from our living in player. We had a Waker of Waves in hand and two mana to sort of use it right and start digging, but we decided to hold it. And to me, that sort of says that we might be sort of waiting to use that as our refuel potential and maybe go for a quick living in here and have some backup afterwards. Because normally you would love to Waker of Waves there, get a huge 7/7 in the yard, and sculpt your hand.
Yeah. So here we go. Just get some more threats out onto the board. Will we see any response from Mateo?
Yeah, so typically you try to wait for the cascade to happen. Almost assuredly it is living in, but every now and again your opponent does something a little crazy. Slash, you just want to respond once you actually have the card in the stack. There's no reason to do anything else. Deep in the deck is the living end.
This is where you feel thankful for the online client when it just
Yeah.
happens.
Yeah, and a thing to note here too that I always like to highlight to people is I think that's a weird version of living in there from a Universes Beyond. Is you want to take a look at what's there, and I
Of
noticed
course.
four force negations. So unless we've got a deck rules violation going on, that you're not going to get countered for the foreseeable future. Those will go to the bottom of the deck. Obviously, a fetch lane can activate them, but that subtlety as well. It looks like two of them. Typically, that's a card that's between I would say 2 and 4 in living in decks. Like we talked at the beginning, we've seen some deceits in these decks. It's sort of it's very variable these days, but you have a pretty good sign that you're going to be able to make a lot of things happen, and that's before you even potentially surveil into something like an Atraxa here.
Yeah, like you sort of at this point, if you feel like you're starting to fall behind, you with that information can start to take a bit of a educated hedged bet on I can probably start developing, or at least develop with a backup plan because yeah, that is a lot of stuff you would have been scared of about being in hand from Emilio's side of the field. So we'll see where this where they take this.
I wouldn't be surprised too to just see us discard almost our entire hand. I do see a Quantum Riddler over there.
Yeah.
So if your hand isn't good enough now to really do something, you could just discard all of it. Looks like our hand does have some gas in it though, because you could have discarded a bunch and just got your draw two off the Riddler. As now it's the Sphinx versus the world here.
There is that is a chunky board. Although I do back a Riddler. I do back a Riddler once it's resolved. A 4/6 and flying and doing what it does is, again, had such an impact across all of the formats, and it makes complete sense because it's a great magic card for being on rate and versatility. Why it's found a really good place in modern. So when we untap and draw here, how are we going to respond?
Yeah, so
Hopefully,
currently we're facing lethal even if we block the Waker of Waves, which is the biggest creature. So we have to do something this turn.
feel like it just needs to be in like an attractor and all the gas somehow. But that's just a warped Riddler right now.
Yeah, Warped Riddler plus Ephemerate would keep you alive. Of note, remember, Waker of Waves is -1, -0ing all of Mateo's creatures. That means we are not able to take profitable blocks against these Sphinxes. If the Waker wasn't in the play right now, then you could double block the Sphinxes. You fall to like 2 or 3 life, but you could start chipping away at stuff, maybe rip, a Solitude, start to catch back in this game here. But looks like we do have this Ephemerate here, and you are probably looking for a Solitude at this point as the card that can sort of start to get you back into this game, as that would open up the block I talked about the Sphinxes, because you would answer the Whale, and then suddenly, you're taking 10. That's a lot, but you'll have 2 4 6s in a full hand versus your opponent sort of on nothing in that world. So we'll have to see what we can do.
We saw a force a turn too late, basically. They do now. Looks like they were both drawn for turn as well that turn. So the hope, the answer they needed is, like you said, a Solitude at this point.
Yeah,
But
notably, Colossus Sky Turtle in hand is going to force a chump block here on this Riddler. You don't normally love to bounce a Riddler to hand, but when it's killing another one and putting your opponent on just a few life points, it's pretty great.
considering what have they got to deal with the Colossal Sky Turtle here?
I think the idea here, and I could be wrong, is maybe thinking about fetching to use Faithful Mending and sort of figure out, if there's anything in my deck I forgot in this spot here. That's kind of the one real play. Like I talked about before here, if you block the Waker of Waves, you're getting attacked for what I believe is 18. The 5 from the Int, the 8 from the Sphinxes, and then a 3 and a 2 over there. That equals up to 18. So you have to block the Waker of Waves, unless you have some sort of way to answer, unless I did my math wrong. Or our life totals are wrong. Sometimes, in coverage, players forget to accidentally, click the life total up in some regard. So
I think they're going for what you mentioned. They're gonna search and Faithful Mending potentially, and then hope to potentially, like, I don't know, get
yeah,
some kind of removal
Solitude.
spells. Solitude.
You could also you could theoretically hit something like, well, no, I guess that doesn't actually keep you meaningfully alive. I was gonna say you could maybe, try to get something big in the yard and catch back up, but you are gaining 2 life here, but that is back to 18, which I believe is how much we're getting hit for here. So gotta
The
have
thing in
something.
situations, the things in situations like this, though, is all about like you first of all have to think about how am I staying alive, and
Hmm.
then think about how do I stay alive another turn. So unfortunately, this is quite a backbreaking position, and yeah, digging and hoping is sometimes what you need to do. That was two thought seizes. So that will not do anything and take Matteo away and into game two. Very different matchup now. Now that the sideboards come into play, so who becomes proactive and who sits back and stops things from happening is the question for the sideboarding. And I guess the living end plan is I still just want to do my big thing.
Yeah, from living in here, we're probably going to see, inevitable betrayal. That's going to probably come in. That allows you just to take their card from the opponent's deck there and not even fight it with their graveyard. We sometimes see players even side out all their living ends, right, and just bring in these betrayals. So that's on the table. Teferi is a great card to bring in this matchup. We saw Misvise Village in play in the last living end game. It didn't actually get activated. That's a great way against counterspells to fight. Through it, Teferi obviously does the same. And then Mystical Dispute, consigns coming in. If your opponent didn't have main deck Teferi, they're bringing in main deck Teferi. And worst comes to worst, hitting a Psychic Frog is huge. We saw a Psychic Frog came down. Ultimately, didn't matter too much with how that hand in game developed. But it was the difference between the game being sort of, actually somewhat competitive and not. So fighting over all of those things can be pretty huge. And then sometimes we will see cards like Force of Vigor or Foundation Breaker get added in to hedge around various potential graveyard hate cards. Kind of depends on what you think your Goryo's opponent has going for them. But I feel very confident that these 3 blue cards I mentioned in the sideboard are going to come in.
Yeah, so and with our Goryo's player, like, do they just turn themselves into a straight up mid range deck and even almost forget about trying to do an explosive Goryo's turn and just like
Mhm.
have answers and frogs and riddlers for days? Like, is that really where they take this?
Yeah, I think the thing that's kind of a common misconception about Gorgos is that everyone kind of treats it like Legacy Reanimator, right? Where, before Demir, I guess I should say, before tomorrow's coverage, but kind of like, hey, I'm going to put this unbeatable thing in play, and it sort of insta wins the game on the spot. This deck kind of uses its, Gorgios to generate a lot of value and then grind you out. And this deck is leaning just more into that grind. So yeah, I do expect us to see less of these cards like Fatal Push and Prismatic Ending, which normally would be kind of controlling element cards, be replaced with, much stronger cards like Consign that are just going to stop the cascade and make it awkward. And I don't expect us to kind of force the Gorgios. I expect us just to pick apart our opponent and lean into Riddler Psychic Frog, but still probably have, one or two Goryo's Vengeance in our deck, probably still have the Atraxas and take out the Grizzlebrand and bring in, Ashiok. That's a very devastating card. Mystical Dispute to fight back over other Mystical Disputes is huge. Surgical Extraction, not the best card against Living End, but if you ever counter the first Living End, it can be game winning. Part of why Inevitable Betrayal is actually such a great include in these sideboards. So, along with that second Teferi, which you talked about, would have been game ending if it came down in game number one. So, a lot of little sort of small upgrades here going on the Goryo's deck, and we are really buckling in to grind out this game.
Yes, exactly. You're sort of sitting back and stopping the living end from happening, and then as long as it never really happens, you should just win the game based upon all of the levels of interaction that you have. But getting to go first will also be really, really handy, because if you do just happen to, as you say, stumble into the Gorios, like, you will also find yourself in a really strong position. And starting with Surveilling, it's stayed on top. That's or at least we think it is. That's always a good start and a good sign. And yeah, we can see, as we can just see the actual venue there as well. What a bustling venue the Four Seasons event has been once again. Today's completely massive, nearly 300 players, and also there's pre-modern happening at the same time as well, which
Mm.
is also just as popular from what I'm hearing and from people who are there before we head into Legacy tomorrow. In the meantime, we've had land and pass, and maybe going and looking to try and get a psychic frog online here whilst the board isn't too scary.
Yeah, developing a frog here would be great. Obviously going first in Magic is a pretty huge advantage, right? Everyone sort of knows that. But especially in these sort of matchups, being able to slam a frog, slam a Teferi before your opponent has a chance to actually play their marquee card, since the soonest they can do it is turn 3, is just compounding so much more here. So I'm excited to see sort of, how we're going to navigate through this as the living end player, as you are a bit on the back foot, but not out of the game by any means.
Yeah, so it is the frog as we expected. We're fetching, so probably not answering this. But yeah, good rating on the frog art. I do love the old bordered shiny frogs to match the Ravnica return lands as well. As we are, oh, we got two force
Uh,
and negations in hand, just
Well, we
for
have a mystical dispute, so we actually are answering the frog.
yeah, we're answering the frog. Okay, so yeah, this hand is you're doing nothing for a while, from what we can see, and yeah, this will be probably a little bit of a slower game than than that frog would have let us have happen. A solitude, though, I can see has just been taken off the top. And yeah, this will be quite a development. This might be more of the sort of like who does literally blink first. Oh, another frog. Well, that's a nice follow up. This
Yeah.
you actually can't beat a good real life Thoughtseize bug, right? Like, that's the sort of
Mhm.
that's the ones where you just both look at each other on the side of the table and just go, yeah, okay, no worries.
You got me there. And this early mystical dispute was great here, for our living end player. But we don't really have a graveyard right now. So unless we have another mystical dispute, which is maybe hiding out in the hand, you're gonna need to kind of set up. But we talked about in last game how Frog is a big threat, both on life total, but also making living ends maybe a bit of more dubious than you would prefer them to be. Colossal Sky Turtle is in hand, so if you go really large on this frog, let's say you discard 3 cards trying to make the game much shorter, you are going to get blown out. So we at least have that going for us as our living end player. But it is a precarious place to be. I'm really curious to see how we're going to navigate around this psychic frog.
Yeah, exactly. It would be it'll be interesting to see how much time this frog is given on the field, or whether there's going to be an effort and a turn taken off to get it away. But there's mana for Mateo to sort of actually do something about any